This is going to be a very spontaneous, impromptu addendum to the Dirt on Dickens entry that I did a couple days ago, because I found some more information on that, which, had I really been diligent, I should have known at the time. But anyway, it doesn't matter. What I found was that this fellow, A.N. Wilson, and I'm going to work from my notes here. He's actually a famous author with a whole bunch of books to his credit, and an interesting kind of upper class character. He has a new book out called The Mystery of Charles Dickens. So I have got that book on order, the cheapest used one that I could find, given that I'm on a budget. But he's a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, I believe. Um, and I found online, I'm looking for his name because it's Andrew something, I believe. I've got it written down here somewhere. Andrew Norman Wilson. He's, 3 years older than I am. He has the same level degree I have, which is to say a master's degree. He was intending to be a priest, apparently, and as I read it, he got disillusioned. I'm going to tear this because I got the wrong page in front. He got disillusioned with religion. So he's kind of I don't know if he's an atheist, he may be, but he's kind of a critic of traditional religion, which I am too in my own way. But I don't think he went where I went with it. He's a fan of Charles Dickens, actually. I think what he's doing is what I suggested, which is that he and a great many other people are trying to assimilate the information that John Bowen got and put into the stream, about Dickens trying to have his wife Catherine put away in an insane asylum. So this fellow's kind of a muckraker, and he got in there and found some more dirt, basically, is what it amounts to, but he's still a fan. Now, there's an online interview with him. Let's see if I can find the reference to it. This was done through the auspices of the University of Buckingham, and the interview was with a fellow named Sir Anthony Selden, who's a real British aristocrat. They both of them speak in the kind of high-tone British accent, and are very cultured and very nice fellows, near as I can tell. And they go on for an hour together, colluding to apologize for Dickens and to make it okay, The only thing they can't quite fathom is why he was so mean to his wife, but everything else they have an explanation for, which is fine. That really wasn't what I was going to go into. I just wanted to admit that there is this book that I should have known about that I didn't. The book, apparently, as much of it as I can see in Amazon.com, it has footnotes, which means it has citations, which means that I should be able to get the original sources for this material from that book, I'm hoping. So I may not have to get it directly from him or from the British Library or anybody else. It may be there in the footnotes. So that'll be a while before that comes in. It occurred to me, the other thing I wanted to address briefly, nothing with me is briefly, was the fact that these scholars are going to say, well, have you read anything of Dickens? And what I've read of Dickens is what I was required to read in high school and college, and A Christmas Carol. And I had to force myself to read that all the way through. It's painful for me to read any plagiarist's work, and these plagiarists in particular, but it's also somewhat fruitless to read the work of a plagiarist for obvious logical reasons that you don't know what's theirs and what's somebody else's. You can't evaluate the work of a plagiarist, or you can, but it's very painstaking and difficult. And if the plagiarist happened to plagiarize you or who you were in a past life, it's painful, So I could read all of Dickens' works, and, what am I going to get out of that? Because I have to try to discern what's him and what ideas came from his illustrators and which ideas came from him, and which ideas came from an American anti-slavery author and which were his in American Notes, and so on. And A Christmas Carol, I would say 90% of that is Matthew and Abby, and maybe 10% of it is Dickens. For example, I've determined that Dickens completely reimagined the character of the ghost of Christmas Present. That was not Abby's ghost, this big giant with the bare chest who's surrounded by meat dishes. Abby was a vegetarian, I'm pretty sure, and she was a proper Victorian. She would never have conceptualized the ghost that way. So that was all Dickens. And actually, at least one person, I forget his name, but he's the one that wrote about Dickens inventing Christmas. He theorizes that Dickens patterned that ghost after his friend and publicist, John Forster. I don't know where he gets that from. I can't find a reference for that. I don't know if it's just his assumption or if he has some letter or something that suggests it. But I can well believe that, because Dickens completely reworked that particular character. And then very quickly in the narrative, it goes back to something that Abby would have written. See, I've got that in my article too. But it's a question that's going to come up. Well, how can you say such things if you haven't even read Dickens' work? So the first answer is Dickens was a plagiarist. I can prove that. And why would I bother to read a plagiarist work? What am I going to get out of that? What conclusions can be drawn from such a thing? Unless you can somehow or other discern, and that's very difficult. Almost nobody could figure that out except possibly me with regard to A Christmas Carol, but I can't go into Great Expectations or any other Dickens work and tell you how much was his idea and how much was somebody else's idea. How do I know? I can guess based on my understanding of Dickens' personal character what it was really like, but I can't know for sure. I mean, just as a general ballpark rule, I could say that the most sordid, or as Mr. Wilson says, vulgar material was Dickens. And anything that was spiritual was probably not him, or was him trying to please the public and being melodramatic. Anything that was really mystical was not him. And Mr. Wilson, as much as comes right out and says that Dickens was not a mystic and did not truck with either traditional religion, and he had no real sense of mysticism or theology, see. For a while, apparently, he was a Unitarian. He didn't believe that he believed that Christ was an ordinary man, So right there, all of the mysticism in A Christmas Carol goes out the window as far as being something that Dickens would actually have written sincerely, which it was clearly written sincerely in the original. But the other answer to that question, which I don't know that they'll accept or not, but the truth of it is, from my point of view, is that I'm coming at it from the other side, from Matthew Franklin Whittier's work and Abby Poyen Whittier's work. And I already have the answers, In other words, I already have the solution to the problem. So I'm working the problem backwards with the solution, which is why nobody has gotten it. Everybody has worked it from the assumption that Dickens wrote this work. They approached it from the side of the plagiarist, which you really can't get. That's an amorphous soup once you get, it's like quicksand getting into the work of a plagiarist. You can't get at the truth of it from that side. You have to get into the truth of it from the side of the people he was stealing the ideas from, or in the case of A Christmas Carol, was stealing the actual work from. And so there you're approaching the problem with the solution and working it backwards. With that, I don't need to read all of Dickens' works. I need to read enough of them to dip in to see that they are vulgar and sensationalized and plagiarized, And that's really all I need. Then I go into A Christmas Carol with my understanding of Matthew and Abby's work, and that's extensive. I'm the only person in the world that has this knowledge at this point, see. I am the world expert on Matthew Franklin Whittier and Abby Poyen Whittier's work by default. And from that side, I can go into A Christmas Carol and I can immediately point out, I recognize it, from past life memory, recognition memory, but also from 11 years of studying Matthew and Abby's work. I say, that's Matthew's humor. That's, here's Abby's spirituality, and I can recognize it. So I don't need to read all of Dickens' works. So that's all. I just had a little, 10-minute addendum to add. When the book comes in, The Mystery of Charles Dickens, and I get into those footnotes. If there are references, and if I can order, digital copies of them from the British Library, say, or find them online, then I can pursue that a little more and find out exactly where these references come in. The one detail that I really want to nail down is this one little mention by Wilson, which is not in the other account that I read online in the British Library. And that is that when Dickens got addicted to play acting, to reenacting this scene of Bill Sikes murdering Nancy in Oliver Twist, that he continued to do it privately in the garden after he was not allowed to perform it publicly anymore. Apparently he performed it publicly 28 times, had a small stroke because he got himself so excited and worked up. The doctor ordered him to stop, but he did it privately anyway, which is to say it really became an obsession with him. He was getting off on it because that was basically his personality. It wasn't, so what they think is, as they apologize for Dickens, they think that he was a complex character and that part of him was a philanthropist and a social reformer and a really nice guy, and part of him like Jekyll and Hyde, and part of him was this dark character that had these dark shadows like we all have. And, no, he was a hypocrite. He was this vulgar character who put on a layer like the sheep and the wolf in sheep's clothing, rather, who pretended to be these other nice things. That's my take on it. Now, here's the truth. If I can get A Christmas Carol away from Charles Dickens, I don't care what he was after that. All of this is for the purpose of getting A Christmas Carol out of his hands as he goes down, because John Bowman has shot the fatal shot and he's going down. His ship is going to sink. And I want to get A Christmas Carol out of his hands before his ship sinks. And after that, I don't really care what people think about him or, what happens to his legacy or anything else. It's none of my business. I'm not here to destroy particular historical characters. I am here to get Matthew and Abby's work back away from them, and then I'm done.